sister.
Hello.
Hey,
I'm Aericka,
I'm Kim.
and this is our inaugural podcast of Spiritual Mamas. And so we thought we would take you on our journey as mamas that have been trying to raise kids, make it through a workday, navigate mental health, and go through a spiritual awakening. So,
Buckle up.
yeah. We had been meeting for a long time talking about all of this stuff, and we decided that maybe other people would want to hear what we've been going through and just find it interesting or learn something from it.
Yeah, kind of pull it all in together and be there for community, because that's one of the things that we've struggled with is where do you find people who are going through something like this or have gone through something like this and figure out, how to pull it all apart and
Yeah, definitely.
make sense of it.
Because I kind of came from a woo background, but
I did not.
but I've been living not a woo background. So, this is somewhat new to me, but not at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely kind of more on the newer side for you. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so a little bit about me. I'm Aericka. I am a nurse practitioner. I've been in the medical field for over 20 years now.
Jeez.
Yeah. And I've done everything from ICU work to now mental health work. And I am a stepmom of 3 kids, 3 to 4 kids, depending on the day. And that range from teens to adults. But I am their full-time mom. So going through that has been an interesting journey for sure. And I want to say, I don't know when I would say maybe 2019, 2020-ish is when I started to have some of this spiritual stuff start to happen. And during that time as well, I was going through a lot of mental health stuff. I started going towards the Reiki and things kind of help with my mental health, like massage, meditation, all that sort of stuff to kind of help with that mental health. And I think that's kind of where some of this stemmed from.
Just led you right down that path.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Then the universe was like, hello, we see you.
I was knocking lightly, and now I'm here.
I'm banging on your head.
Yes.
For sure.
That happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that, going through a lot of those types of things with mental health or medical. In my case, I think there was a lot of medical stuff that I was going through around that time, the 2020 time. But sometimes that just leads you right down this path, and you can't avoid it. So I am Kim, and I do not have that woo-woo background that you have so graciously brought up. I do have a lot more of a religious background in my family, and that I think has put up some barriers for me and kind of made me pause on any sort of spirituality. I am a mom of one teen. He's about to be 20.
Oh my God.
I know, it's wild. And I was a young mom, and so I think that's one of the things that also probably led us down this path is both of our roles in motherhood were untraditional. And that definitely played a role. Yeah, I am a mental health therapist and have been in this field for 7 years, 8 years at this point. And prior to that, in medical field as a medical assistant. And so there's a lot about health and wellness. I think that has always been at my fingertips and
Mm-hmm.
always been part of my life. And the spiritual side was just the side that needed to come to complete it all,
Yeah,
bring it full circle.
definitely. So how did we meet? I'm talking about that.
Yeah. Gosh, when was that?
2012.
2012.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was working as a medical assistant in a doctor's office, primary care, and you came and lit up my world.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, it's my first NP job, which it was like trial by fire for sure at that office. Loved it, but oh my God, I didn't know what I was doing at first. That was a lot. But yeah, like we became friends like super fast.
Yeah.
And I always I always say that I was like your second friend and you're my first friend. As in like, you know how you have like groups of friends where like you have like those go-tos,
Yeah.
right? Like those are kind of like your first layer of friends. Like you go to them and they're your people.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was that for you. You had already had your own like set of friends and family, where I tend to not have that much because I move around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But now I feel like we've moved into at least I think we're in each other's first people.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
And then you left us in what, 2018?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to pursue your amazing career. We kind of still kept in touch intermittently. And it was weird because like I would be like, oh, I haven't talked to Kim in like forever, and go to text, and then you would text me,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa, and it just kind of kept happening like that. Yeah, it just kind of kept happening like that, and you know we'd hang out, and every time we hung out it was like awesome, and I don't even know how this started. Like, how did we started like being like super close? Like, how I don't even know.
I couldn't tell you. I don't know that there was like a moment or a point. And I think it's funny that you say, that you thought of me as like a first friend, and that maybe you were like a second friend to me, because I am, I can be a very like bubbly person, prickly bubbly person.
That's a new one.
I definitely have RBF, and I know that.
Same.
So I have like walls up, so I don't necessarily open up to people. At the time, I think I would have considered you like my first friend, one of my go-tos.
All right.
But to hear you say that you would have seen it otherwise, I think that is because I put walls up and I don't necessarily like immediately.
It may also be like my projection of the situation, just because, like I said, I tend to not have a lot of friends because I've moved so many times in my life and multiple jobs and stuff. So I guess I just assumed like you already have a friend group, and why would I be like number one in there?
Yeah. I have found that the people in my life that I am very close with, the friends that I have that I'm very close with, and you are definitely one of them, I lean into those relationships when they're reciprocal, when I feel like I'm getting out of the relationship what I'm giving to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that played a role in how we got here, how our friendship developed to this. It just is. It's not like something that I feel, at least I don't feel like I have to put too much effort into.
No.
And it's not something that's like, oh yeah, this day this happened, and so that changed our friendship forever. It was kind of like we just grew together.
Yeah. No, I'll agree with that. Yeah. It's been a fun road though. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that we talked about like how we got here to like this podcast experience. And I remember distinctly us having a conversation when we went for a walk, and it was like, hey, I'm experiencing some things, you're experiencing some things, and we seem to be experiencing similar things around similar times. let's talk about it.
Yeah. Like, I think I was like jokingly was like, let's have a podcast.
Yeah.
And you're like, let's. And then like from then on, I was like, okay, like that was a lot of left field. And then I ended up having my first psychic reading with Gabrielle Celeste from Spiritual Sisters, right? Podcast. And she randomly said, you should have a podcast. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I literally said this 2 weeks prior, like out of left field. And so like after that, I just became like obsessed with the idea and I pitched it to you and you're like, yeah,
let's do it.
Let's do it. So here we are. So we touched on this being like a spiritual thing and like having a spiritual awakening. I'll give a definition and then you could tell me what you think.
Yeah.
Or do you want to tell me what you think first? And then I'll give a definition.
I was thinking about this earlier today because I think it's going to be interesting for us to kind of talk about this. I was thinking about it earlier because I have this idea of what spirituality and a spiritual awakening is. And I don't know if there is one like definition
Agreed
for that. So for me, a spirituality has a lot to do with connection to yourself, connection to source, spirit, energy, nature, people, relationships. So a spiritual awakening, I think, has a lot to do with coming from being disconnected to being connected.
I like that.
And that I think is the way that I would frame it in the simplest terms.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Because it's not simple.
No.
Well, I'll give a definition that I found online. This is from a Soulful Rebellion blog.
Okay.
And they said a spiritual awakening refers to a profound realization or shift in consciousness, often characterized by a deeper understanding of oneself and the nature of reality. It can involve feelings of connectedness, increased awareness, and a sense of purpose or meaning in life. People may experience it through various practices such as meditation, reflection, or significant life events, leading to a personal growth, transformation, and a revelation of beliefs and values.
Okay. That's a lot. It's a lot, I think, to unpack a little bit. Would you say that that is on par with what your experience has been?
I think so. I would. So I grew up Catholic, very Catholic, embraced 100%. My dad's whole side of the family's Catholic. My mom's side is actually Protestant. And she's still she's been an organist for her church for 45 years now. So we kind of got that aspect, but still very much based around religion. And I prayed, got into all of that. But in college, I kind of stepped away from it. I took a theology class and just really was like, wow, like it's all connected. And what people say Christianity is actually like very pagan and, all this stuff. And I just kind of stepped away from it for years and years. And I more recently was looking to get back into like that. I wanted to have like that connection, thinking at that level.
Yeah.
And so I started going to church and I was kind of like, I'm not feeling it, and my mom was giving me some ideas about things that she had been doing recently. And I started it and I was it felt wrong. Not that there's anything wrong with what that practice is. It just wasn't what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And then like going to Reiki and meditating and all these other things, like my third eye just blew up and opened significantly. And I 100% feel much more connected to source, spirit. I call it source. Way more connected. So yeah, I would definitely and have grown significantly from it. So And recently going through practices to be a shamanic practitioner, which has been amazing. Just started that. So, which is really connecting me even further to source and the universe.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I think that idea of, and maybe it's not for everybody feeling like disconnected at first, but the idea of becoming connected, it comes through so much. So something just isn't sitting right. Something doesn't feel right. I need something more, whether it's personal growth or connection with source, with God, with spirit, with whatever. I need more connection in my relationships. I need something to be different. And knowing how it feels, that like when you were describing that it just felt wrong, I can definitely resonate with that. Not necessarily feeling wrong, but feeling off. Like that just isn't for me. I grew up very Protestant. My family, all sides of my family, had gone to church always. My mother and stepdad are youth pastors and or have been at times, and there's a lot of like religion and connection in that, but religion doesn't resonate for me. And we were growing up in times where, in cultures where it's like we go to church and you're at church from 6 p.m. till midnight, and there's lots of speaking in tongue, and there's lots of celebrating, and there's lots of preaching, and there's lots of energy. And for me, it just never felt right. So yeah, there was just always something. I am almost sometimes envious of that for people. I want that type of connection, but I want it to feel right for me. And that's kind of what I've been searching for and trying to figure out. What does that look like in my day-to-day? And part of what that brings up is challenges with, how do I view myself? How do I view my relationships? How do people in my life view me? Or what do I imagine they would view me as? And then again, coming back to, how does that change our connection?
Yeah. That's going to be a whole episode, I think.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about with that, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did grow up Catholic, but I did say that I also had a little woo-woo background. Like my mom, it was always kind of talked about in our family. Like my mom is a Reiki master, has been for, oh gosh, a long time. I'm going to say 30 years. So that's always like energy healing has always been talked about, like that sort of thing. And my grandma on the Catholic side was always talking to people who had passed over. Like my grandfather died at 52 and she talked to him like he was in the room all the time. If something was moved, she would like, "Daddy, put that back." Like, she called him daddy, and like, always was talking to them. We always talked about, like, we always prayed to Saint Anthony if you lost something. Pray to Saint Anthony, and sure shit, that did work. I'm just telling you. But like that sort of thing. So like, my parents were very open to conversations. I remember having a conversation when I was much younger, that I was like, well, how do we know that like there's not other gods out there? Like, I believe God, but like, how do we not know that like, there is the Indian gods. There are like the what are the other, like Buddha and like these other things. Like, how do we not know that they're just not like a big family, and having conversations around that. So my mom can see energies. My mom can feel energies. She would always talk about when she did pray, she would get responses and stuff like that. So it's always been kind of a thing, but not, I think, to the point now.
Yeah.
And I married an atheist or agnostic. Can be an agnostic. I don't think he believes in anything. So that's an interesting.
I'm sure.
He thinks I'm crazy most of the time, I think, but he's just rolling with it.
Okay, but he loves you anyway.
He does. He does. He's just rolling.
Yeah.
So there's this notion that prior to having a spiritual awakening, you have to go through a dark night of the soul. And what the dark night of the soul usually is some sort of like big hardship, like big depressive episode or big struggle, deaths, illnesses, something big. Do you think you went through something like that? That kind of maybe
I
sparked this?
definitely think I did. I find myself sometimes comparing what I went through to what I hear other people say they go through, and I don't know that that's helpful for me because it always just makes me question whether or not what I experienced was what I experienced. But in the neatest little box that I can put that in, I was having extreme disconnection in my relationship. I have been with my partner for 21 years.
Yeah, and it's a long time. And you guys were young too when you started, so
Yeah.
that's a lot of
Yes.
growth, maybe not growth.
Yeah, there was a lot there. So we were going through some serious disconnection, and I was questioning what that all meant. At the same time that I had gotten a medical diagnosis, lupus, that I was not prepared for.
And left field for sure.
Yeah, super, super resistant to. And at the same time, feeling extremely depressed. So going through a depression, which I have struggled with at times, but this was different than any other time. It was probably the lowest I've ever been. So combining all of those things at the same time, I would definitely classify that as my dark night of the soul. And it was like, something's got to shift.
Yeah, definitely. Why do you think, I think I've read this and I don't really remember, why do you think that has to happen? Like, why do you think that like the dark night of the soul starts and then like you come out on the other side with this awakening? Like what do you think is that? Like, what does that mean? Like, why?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know in certain terms, like this has to happen because XYZ. But if I have to put it together for myself, I think without having that sort of shift, you're coasting. Everything is what it is. However your life is being experienced and perceived is standard. And if you don't have something to shake you, if you don't have a reason to look at things differently, to question things, to search for more, to search for different, then you just stay on that path. You don't have the awakening.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder if when you're hitting those lows, if like, I don't know, does it like signal the universe that like, hey, they need help? I don't know. Like, I don't know. I think I had a thought on that before, but I really don't know. I think it totally makes sense what you're saying. If that makes sense.
I can definitely see what you're kind of asking there and whether or not that's a thing that happens, and I wouldn't doubt it.
I want to feel like your soul like reaches out.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, hey.
Yeah.
This person needs some help. Like,
yeah.
This life needs help. Somebody come help her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. I could definitely conceptualize that and see that that's a thing. If that is happening, I would imagine then you have to be on some level ready for that awakening to happen.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people who go through things that don't end up
Absolutely. So in the shamanism class that I was taking, she was talking about how like my teacher was talking about you often will have like that first knock, that first, hey, like,
Yeah.
come on, let's do this. Like you have these gifts or whatever. Like let's do this. And often there's the no, the rejection, or I don't have time,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't, that's not me, or whatever. And then oftentimes, but if you have these gifts, these things, then I think the universe just keeps coming back.
Yeah.
Because like,
Yeah.
definitely.
You can't avoid it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I told you this before. I told you about the tarot reading.
Yeah.
So I think my first knock was this tarot reading I had. I think I said it was like 2011 or 2010. This tarot reading at like a Renaissance fair in New York. I'll never forget this guy. His name's Phoenix, and I just sat down at his table and literally said nothing. I think I gave him my birthday, and I didn't say anything else. He just starts doing this tarot card, like one of those the big tarot card readings, and he was so spot on. I was just like, I think my jaw was open the entire time, just like, okay. And he's doing this, and all of a sudden he stops and he looks at me and he goes, "Why aren't you using your gifts?" And I was like, "Excuse me?" And he's like, "Yeah, why aren't you using your gifts? Because you could do a lot of good with them." And he said you could help a lot of people, I think is what he said. And I was like, I don't really. I kind of knew what he was talking about, but I didn't know what he was talking about at the same time. I was like, yeah, no. He's like, well, when you're ready, you'll find me. Mm-hmm. And those words have resonated with me for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think, and recently after going through all this, I started to look for him again, and I can't find him anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think what that meant was like spirit talking through him saying, when you're ready, I'm getting goosebumps, when you're ready, you'll find me, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And so I think this is like my second or third knock, that I'm finally answering.
Yeah.
So
I got chills.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh my God, like my entire body right now. But yeah, so I think my like true awakening started after having a pretty nasty dark night of the soul, that started probably in like 2019, 2020. My kids were having a lot of mental health issues, which led me to then start have some mental health issues. And then COVID hit. And as being a health worker in COVID, that was just horrific.
Yeah.
And I felt so helpless and so anxious. And so, I mean, like, oh, it was awful. And so like that just furthered my depression. And then just everything that my kids went through just kept like heightening. That yeah, it was pretty dark. I can say it was pretty dark. Probably the most depressed I've ever been in my life, most anxious I've ever been in my life. So I think that it definitely, by reaching out for help to calm my anxiety. Actually, I know why I went to the Reiki person is I was looking for her to just like kind of like take the negativity off of me. I was like, get this shit off of me. And that was like the crazy. I'd had Reiki before, with my mom, but I think I kind of didn't let go because it was my mom. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to give her all my stuff, And when the woman started the Reiki, I saw this like rush of like brilliant purple color behind my eyes. I'd never seen that before. And it was so intense that I was backing away from how intense it was. Yeah. And then like it turned to yellow, and it turned to like, I don't even remember all the colors. Like there was all kind of colors. And then there was this white lotus that went from my heart to my head, and, brilliant white. And then my whole body was covered in flames, but like not didn't hurt, but like covered in flames. It was the most wild thing I've ever been through. I was like, holy shit, what was that? And when I talked to my mom about it later, she was like, I think you just got anointed. you got anointed by fire, which is a rare Reiki thing. And I was like, nah. It's like, that's crazy. And then ever since then, I see things, I hear things, I know things. Like,
yeah.
So
That's a pretty cool experience to have.
it was insane.
I think that's part of just being able to see the signs, whatever they are. That's part of the process. It's like figuring out, where is this all leading? You, me, us, everyone who's searching. Where are we going with all of this? And be able to explore and unpack together.
Absolutely. Well, do you think we've
touched base on like who we are and how we got here and what we want to do?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. How do you want to wrap up?
Well, this is our first podcast of hopefully quite a few.
Yeah.
Quite many. So we ask that you rate us, like us on whatever you're listening to us on, and tune in for the next one.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.